Hi guys, and welcome to the Filmy Thingy Podcast, the improv podcast that takes you on a journey through your favourite movies and pulls back the curtain on those
What in the hell?
movie moments.
He's John.
And that's Matt. Matt, what film have we found the thingy from today?
This week, John, we're going to be talking about Mrs
Doubtfire!
So, your choice this week?
Yeah.
Mrs Doubtfire.
Yeah.
Robin Williams.
Came across it on
peak.
holiday. Yeah, I would say he is in his pomp on in that film, along with a couple of other films around the same time, Aladdin included. You feel like he's just got the role. They've just let him do whatever he wants. It's so good. Obviously, he's an absolute genius.
Agreed.
A comedy genius, like stand-up, improv, and just a generally good actor as well.
He's a really good actor.
He's really, more dramatic roles obviously followed later down the line, but in his comedy pomp, obviously we grew up with things like Aladdin, Mrs Doubtfire, Jumanji, another great film. It's just fantastic in all of them. But in this one particular, it kind of has a free rein. There's a lot of improv that probably stayed in the film. There's probably a lot that didn't as well.
The character is, seemingly, without knowing him, very similar to who he was, I think, as well. Even the character is an actor that likes to just make jokes, mess about, improvise, etc.
When you first meet him, he's obviously doing voiceover work, for the cartoons, and obviously later on in the film he indirectly becomes a host of a kids' TV show by accident, just because he likes to have fun, have a laugh. Obviously that's his downfall in terms of his marriage, and in terms of the storyline is he likes to probably have too much fun.
But who doesn't?
Is there such thing as too much fun?
Clearly. I'm going to skip ahead on questions for a change, and I'm going to ask...
Oh God.
Favourite Robin Williams role? Not Mrs Doubtfire, obviously.
Favourite Robin Williams role?
Well, you can say Mrs Doubtfire if you want.
It's not. It's up there, but I actually am going to say it's maybe not a curveball, but it's not one of his comedic roles. It's 1 Hour Photo.
Mine too.
It's so good, and
great film.
You just feel so sorry for him. You know, it technically is the villain, if you like. He's obsessed with this family, but he plays it in a way where you feel on his side for a lot of it.
Yeah.
He obviously then goes out of his way to protect this family that aren't his family, but he really, really good performance.
Concur.
Yeah.
I really like that performance as well. Back to Mrs Doubtfire.
Yeah.
Plot in 10 words. Easy, this one, I reckon.
You say that, but
Never is for you, is it?
It never is for me. Okay, let's do it. No. Idiot bloke can't take life serious. Separated, marriage, becomes woman.
Yeah, you have a habit of front-loading your...
I do. I
plots.
cover the first 20 minutes pretty well in 10 words, but not the whole movie.
Maybe that's all you
So
need.
the next question, maybe the question should be, first 20 minutes in 10 words, and I'll probably then give you the whole plot by accident.
We'll try it next time.
Yeah.
Review it in 10 words.
Robin Williams in his prime, feel-good movie, childhood classic.
Nice. Quite sincere, that. I like that one.
It's actually got kind of a nice meaning throughout it as well. There's a lot of character development for everyone, actually, in the whole film, to be fair.
It's got that heart, hasn't it? That
It has got a lot of heart.
Probably that existed mainly in the sort of 90s family movies.
Well, it's a family movie predominantly, isn't it? With a bit of adult humour in there that's kind of hidden, particularly between Doubtfire / Daniel Hiller and Pierce Brosnan. There's a lot of quips between... Well, not quips between them, but more just attacks towards Pierce Brosnan.
She uses the expression at one point, rumpled foreskin.
She does.
One of the things that I like about it is that it doesn't treat the audience as stupid.
No.
And I really noticed it watching it back, that at no point, and I was imagining in a more recent film, and I'm not criticising recent films, but in a more recent film, when he clearly makes the decision that he's going to do something with this nanny situation and try and either prevent it or be involved, or it's never fully made clear what his intention is. We sort of see him working it out as it goes along.
Yeah.
When he first gets given the paper with the advert in, he changes the number, and we sort of figure it out with him. I feel like in a more modern film there would have been a scene where it'd have gone, I have to be the nanny, and they would have just told us what he was going to do.
Yeah, because part of the finding out and him going through the process of finding out delivers more comedy as well, doesn't it? It causes more friction, more tension between the characters, and opens up opportunity for him to be funny or for funny situations to happen as well. So, but you're right. I think I feel like the pacing of the film's pretty good.
Yeah, really good.
For a family film and a comedy, the pacing of the film I think is pretty good.
It is good, and it's really well shot as well.
Yeah,
it's not too generic in terms
favourite
of...
shot. Mine is the classic
when he
Aerosmith in the background. Dude looks like a lady and is hoovering.
Yeah,
and is dancing with the Hoover. That's a really good classic shot.
There's a lot of really good shots. The shot of him running across the restaurant and shouting "Help is on its way" is really good.
Yeah,
and obviously when he puts his face in the cake, and lifts his head up, and
you're literally covering my two favourite quotes.
Favourite quote?
I actually have a few.
Right.
One of them isn't Miss Doubtfire. One of them is when he first meets a social worker. I do a great impression of a hot dog. For the listeners, I'm doing an impression of a hot dog. That always gets me.
Robin Williams obviously given 30 minutes, an hour of him just doing stuff.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been the actor sat opposite him, because she must have really had struggled to hold it together. Yeah, there is the "help is on the way, dear." And he just launches himself over in Bridges' restaurant. "Help is on the way." And then there's when the social worker comes round to the house and he's pretending to be Daniel and his sister.
Yeah.
The truck runs over his mask outside, and the two kids across the street are just laughing at him, fiddling with his bodysuit. And then the classic puts his head in the meringue. "Hello!" out of the fridge. It's so good. And on paper, the sentence "hello," it's not funny. It's even "help is on the way" isn't really that funny a line on paper. It was probably improvised as well, to be fair. Imagine it wasn't and it was scripted. That's purely Robin Williams just bringing that whole thing to life himself.
Is Mrs Doubtfire's accent English or Scottish?
It's hard to tell. And Pierce Brosnan himself, or Stewart, sounds like more like a thick soup than a name. He clocks it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Miss Doubtfire pulls the front of the Merc off, and brings it inside to him, and then he says it's like, "I grew up in England, I can't quite place it." I would say it's probably more Scottish, personally.
Throughout the film, he says that she is both British and English. No one ever says Scottish.
I'm presuming Scottish is encompassed in the British statement.
But it's definitely not an English accent.
I would say it's more Scottish, personally.
So you're aware of how Mrs Doubtfire gets her name?
It's in a newspaper.
From the newspaper.
Yes, yeah.
Police Doubtfire is accidental or something like that.
Yeah.
So there you go. I'm going to pass you a whole Daily Mail front page, and I want you to I'm going to give you 10 seconds to think of your Mrs Doubtfire name.
This is a really good question. Got it. Done.
Go on.
Mrs Sword Sex. Top article.
Mrs Sword Sex. Man was disemboweled with most horrific sword during argument about sex with a woman.
Mrs Sword
Only
Sex.
in Hull, isn't it?
Probably not, but when you say most horrific sword, who's the judge of that? There's plenty of swords out there. Who gets to decide which one's the most horrific?
Let's read the article. Off on a tangent on this one, but I'm afraid it has to be done because people will be questioning that now. A stabbing attack victim was left with his innards hanging out after a violent ex-chef wielded most horrific murderous sword. It wasn't during sex, it was during an argument about sex, okay.
Imagine during sex being disemboweled. Bit niche. Bit niche for my liking.
Do you
fancy being disemboweled?
John, when your wife inevitably wakes up and smells the coffee and leaves you, could you successfully dress as a woman and trick your family into believing you're the new nanny?
100%. I think I've got it in me.
John is 6'4". Ex-rugby player.
I could get away with it.
Just have a look on our social pages and just have a look at John for this.
Okay, right. But, I mean, if I've got Uncle Frank and Aunt Jack on the job, or someone with the same ability...
But do you?
No, but they're easy enough to find, aren't they? 10 a penny.
Are they?
Dime a dozen.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I could. I feel like she already thinks I'm dramatic and over the top. So she might suss me out for that reason, actually.
Yeah.
She might be onto me pretty quick. But I don't think she'd expect me to do it.
But you rock back up.
I come
at
in
the house.
full cardigan, long skirt, stockings,
Yeah.
some little shoes, some little... I've got size 13 feet, but I wear some little shoes. My feet are in agony, blisters,
That worked.
so much
It
blood.
was a challenge, finding a pair of like kitten heels with.
Yeah, I might have to get some bespoke clothing made.
Spend $2,000
Yeah,
on bespoke
but I'm
clothing.
committed. I want to see the kids, right?
Spend $2,000 when you could have been spending that on doing the shitty apartment up.
Yeah, this is it. Yeah,
Mrs. Swordsex.
Mrs. Swordsex at your service. Mrs. Swordsex, what are you doing here? I've come to look after your kids.
So we've come to that point where we have to peel back some of the latex mask of the film and look at the dirty undercarriage. Much like Daniel being caught taking a whiz by his son,
Yeah,
we need to try and catch out this film, this beloved childhood classic.
yeah.
And you are the man to do it. You've brought a film thing in.
Yeah, for the listeners, this is... If you haven't grasped from the intro, we absolutely love this film, so this isn't me. I actually feel bad bringing this one to the table, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring the film thingy. So, it's towards the back end of the film, and the kids know... Well, the two older kids know that Daniel, their dad, is Mrs Doubtfire. They're all going along with it. Things with Stuart are heating up a little bit. Miss Miranda, Sally Field, who actually is fantastic, by the way.
Yeah.
She's so good in it, from a dramatic and comedic perspective. She invites Mrs Doubtfire to the Bridges restaurant for her birthday. Stuart wants to take her and the kids. Previously, we've obviously had the legendary scene where he's been improvising musicals with the dinosaurs in the studio, and the producer sees it and invites him also to Bridges at the same time on the same day. Naturally, Mrs Doubtfire, Daniel, as Mrs Doubtfire, starts flapping a little bit in his Bridges, drops the washing basket, comes up with some story that whatever club she goes...
Bingo, I think.
Bingo, yeah, she's calling it the bingo, I think. I'm calling it the bingo. So she's already come up with her excuse. And then he decides, he's just going to ditch that and go, alright, I'll come. Knowing full well that it's going to be the biggest pain in his ass, which leads to a fantastic series of scenes at the Bridges restaurant.
The scene where he sits back down at the table with the producer.
And just fall. Which bit? Because the bit when he falls off the chair, and that's when he's back with the family.
Yes.
He sits down and goes, oh! Just goes straight off the chair. It gets me every time.
Yeah, that isn't what I was talking about. That I mean,
Full get up.
Where he goes back as Mrs Doubtfire,
the
producer, and it's played almost not for laughs. It's really funny though.
It is, and
it's
that must have been so fun, like to perform, I imagine. And he's obviously getting drunker as it goes on, and he's forgetting, and you would, wouldn't you? You absolutely would. But if he'd just said, no, I can't come, he would still be seeing his kids.
He tries
as Mrs Doubtfire.
He tries to rearrange with the producer.
He does, yes. Yeah.
And she says he's blocked out for 3 months.
Yeah.
Could have done it in 3 months' time. Maybe, I suppose there's an element of,
It's convenient though, isn't it? Because he's been invited to Bridges restaurant, 8 o'clock sharp, he says.
Yeah.
No questions asked, be there. And then within days, his schedule has filled up, backed up into 3 months. How many meetings is it having?
Evening, dinner meetings as well. And also he's got no partner, because at one point he asked Daniel if he can cook him up with one of the waitress's friends.
Yes, he does.
So he's potentially got no partner either at home who he needs to spend time with.
Yeah. What's he doing with his time?
Okay, so there's a couple of things to address then, right off the bat.
Yeah.
The one is the producer.
Mr. Lundy.
I guess it has to happen, the dinner with Jonathan Lundy, because he wants to crack on with it whilst there's an opportunity for a job. Obviously, this sort of thing is potentially once in a lifetime. Why didn't he just say on the day that he had the shits or something?
Yeah, I mean...
That wouldn't have let her down, would it? He's a liar. He literally lies.
He's literally lying and getting paid for it. There's so many different ways in which he could have just said no.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of that there was potentially an ulterior motive to go in.
So he wants... Because subconsciously he wants to go
maybe, because he
wants to get found out.
But if he goes as Daniel and he says to Miranda, no, I've got plans. I've got the bingo. End of story. Daniel going to the restaurant as Daniel himself for his business meeting, which is perfectly entitled to do. What better way to show his ex-partner and his kids that he's doing well by meeting this head honcho producer who's chatting to him about having his own show on TV. You know, so that could have been a way to impress the family. You know, and instead he accidentally reveals his identity.
Has he got so lost in the character of Mrs Doubtfire that he thinks there is no way that I can turn this down, this dinner with the family, as Mrs Doubtfire, and also I can turn that down and then go for a meal as Daniel, because the family will question how Daniel is there, because surely the family know that Daniel is Mrs Doubtfire, even though they don't know, but in his head he is both Mrs Doubtfire and Daniel. So they are going to know that Mrs Doubtfire has turned them down for a meal because Daniel is out for a meal. Do you see what I'm saying?
So maybe. Let me just get this. So you're thinking that if they see Daniel there and not Mrs Doubtfire, they will twig that there's only two possible explanations there, that they must be the same person.
They see Daniel out for dinner with the television producer, and they think, Mrs Doubtfire didn't come tonight, but Daniel did with somebody else.
Yeah.
Daniel must be Mrs Doubtfire. So, I don't know. Is that it?
I mean,
does he subconsciously think he's going to get caught?
The other side of it is that Stuart, quite separately, but also at the Bridges restaurant, when Stuart's ordering the hot jumbler, he says, "No, I'm allergic to pepper."
Yeah.
And obviously, then Daniel uses that against him. Was there something slightly more sinister at play, and he's gone on purpose, knowing that he's got a bit of a clusterfuck of a night coming because he's got to play himself and Mrs Doubtfire for two separate audiences? Why would he risk? What's made him risk revealing his identity to go to Bridges' restaurant and inevitably revealing his identity by accident, losing his kids? What was worth the risk of giving up the bingo, which was a perfectly good excuse?
All the shits. I mean, I can't stress enough how on the day he could have said...
He could have eaten anything the night before.
If I called you on the day, granted it's your birthday and you want to take me to a nice dinner...
I'm taking you to a nice dinner and it's my birthday. What's your thoughts on this? Because this genuinely bugs me. It's particularly rife with teachers, actually, I've found. When it's someone's birthday, that person's whose birthday it is, they bring the cake for everyone.
Yeah.
I find that so odd. For me, everyone else should be, like, bringing them in. Do we bring in, like, do we do a buffet dinner? Do we go out for dinner? Do we bring, like, some cupcakes in or a cake or something? Why is, like, it feels like, and I know this isn't the case, but when people bring their own cake in, it feels like it's really desperate. Look, everyone, it's my and that's absolutely not what it is. But that's how I would feel taking in a cake on my own birthday. I'd be like, look, everyone, it's my birthday. No one gives a shit, obviously, so I eat the whole cake. It's not unheard of. But what's your thoughts?
Well, it's a really boring thought, but I understand it from a perspective.
It really bugs me. Every time I see it happen or someone tells me, I just can't stop thinking about it for hours.
I agree, and I find it quite frustrating. I think that others should be treating you on your birthday. That's the whole point. Otherwise, why bother?
Why bother having a birthday?
But it's just easier for the person who knows when their birthday is to just bring in the cake, and then they can have that expense. They can choose to spend as much as they want. Whereas then it's the whole arranging it, chipping it in thing, because that's always a bollock.
But it's nice. It's a nicer gesture.
It is a nicer gesture, but gathering money from people at work is probably one of the worst activities you can do in life.
Yeah, but you don't need a lot of money. I mean, I actually want to know, when we put this episode out,
you can put a poll.
I'm putting a poll out because I want the people to know that it's not alright to bring your own cake in for your own birthday. So Mrs Doubtfire, Bridges restaurant, what was so important that she needed to go and risk it all, sacrifice her revealing her identity, what was going on? I mean, the fact that she effectively, what could potentially kill Stuart, she does that quite willy-nilly, I think.
Is she intending to eat 2 dinners as well?
I mean, why not? Eh? I mean, he has a couple of good brandies, doesn't he, off Lundy on his
Well,
house.
obviously Lundy's paying, isn't he? He's invited him out. He's got Benzino back. Does he even order? He orders the first because
he orders a salmon.
He orders the salmon.
Does he?
With Pierce Brosnan because then when he falls off and then drops his teeth out.
Yes.
He says, "Just get him to blend it."
Yeah. Check it from both sides. Okay, so considering he's been saying that he can cook, clean, sew, the first time we see the kids at his new flat, they're eating they're eating noodles.
Yeah.
There's a Chinese takeaway. The next time we see he's made a nice big bolognese, the house is all furnished and decorated and nice.
I think he must be in debt. He can't hold down a job. She pays for everything. The house is obviously... She talks about how she's decorated it and she's paid for a lot of she's done a lot of the interior design work because obviously that's her job.
Yeah.
She's got a half-line career and she's well paid by the sounds of it. He can't hold down a job. Since being kicked out or since the start of the divorce, he moves into an apartment which is massive, by the way. Even though it's run down, there's about 14 rooms in that apartment.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
And he manages to do it up to an extent as well. He makes it...
It looks pretty good by the end.
It makes it a comfortable, habitable living space, whatever he calls it. He's also paying through the nose for latex and women's size 11 women's shoes.
Yeah.
And triple XL women's clothing.
Yeah, because every scene you see, he's got a new outfit.
He pays $130 or $140 for one takeaway when he has to have the meal delivered when he screws up the first meal, and he pays a delivery or a caterer. The guy says $132 or something.
Yeah, and he's bodged the dinner. Yeah,
and he says, "Have you got change?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "I didn't think you would."
Yeah.
So he pays $140 for one meal.
He burns the blouse.
He
sets his fake breasts on fire.
Second latex mask. That's not going to be cheap.
That ain't going to be cheap at all. Even from Uncle Frank and Aunt Jack.
He's cooking him lobster on another day. He's cooking him fine iron every day. I think he's hemorrhaging money at this point.
But surely that would come out with Sally from Miranda's.
Why? That's not how it works, is it?
I've never had a nanny.
Well, she's a housekeeper, but surely she's giving her a little stipend or something.
She comes in.
But
this is true.
Kids.
She comes in towards the end of the film with all the shopping and a big bunch of flowers for Miranda. Miranda hadn't paid for her own flowers, so that's got to be coming from Mrs Doubtfire.
She is paying her $300 a week. Well, that's not going to go very far.
Not when you're hemorrhaging latex masks.
Not when you're paying $140 just for one meal.
Yeah.
That's half your salary gone for the week.
So I was saying then that he went to Bridges' restaurant to just eat because he hasn't been eating. He's hemorrhaging money and he just needs...
So. I think he's got no money.
He's got no money.
All his money is going on keeping the Doubtfire facade alive.
Yeah. Keeping the latex topped up.
Keeping the
wardrobe
flowing,
full.
Keeping them... I mean, they're on special order, them size 11 shoes, aren't they?
Yeah.
Probably ordering from overseas, maybe. Specialist.
Yeah.
Italian, I don't know. He mentioned in the first act as Miss Doubtfire that he hates wearing the heels, but he continues to wear them, so I reckon he's got himself a real comfy pair, expensive.
Okay, I'm just going to backtrack slightly with your theory that he's bankrupt effectively.
Yeah, can't afford to feed himself.
Yeah.
He's also paying for Saturday where he's going to spoil the kids and stuff, because he throws massive parties, doesn't he?
He's got goats climbing out of his house.
Where'd you get that money from?
Yeah. But he's getting paid by Miranda. He's also got his job at the studio. Yeah. So he's got two jobs and he's still hemorrhaging money. So the two jobs he's got is not enough to uphold the facade. How has he gone from that to then having a really clean, furnished house towards the end?
Is he also paying a housekeeper to do his house? Is there another Mrs Doubtfire involved?
But he's not Mrs Doubtfire. He's not that Mrs Doubtfire.
In the first scene, where Mrs Doubtfire pretends to be his sister, where he pretends to be his own sister.
Yes, yeah.
Is that real? Is that true? Is that scene a real... That's not Daniel pretending.
That is his real sister, and then that's what gives him... Even though it happens later in the film, that's what gives him...
It's a flashback.
It's a premonition. So even though his sister, in inverted commas, with the meringue cake on her face,
yeah,
that's real. But somehow that is the inspiration for Daniel to think, I'm going to do Mrs Doubtfire. I'm going to be Mrs Doubtfire. But then why don't she keep him fed? She can only afford to feed herself. So she does the apartment up, has it looking nice, gets a load of second-hand furniture, spruces it up, perfectly fine. He's still struggling with 2 jobs to keep up the facade of one of the jobs. So he's just hemorrhaging money, but earning more money to pay for the hemorrhage.
Is she a ghost?
So you think she's a ghost?
Yeah.
The floor's yours to explain this.
Look, get your ducks in order, all right? let's just really lay this one out. Mrs Doubtfire is a real person, dead, deceased.
A real dead person.
A real dead person.
Okay.
Who is in the paper that he reads at the start.
So yeah.
That's where he gets the inspiration from.
So it's the announcement section.
He reads
the Death Notice
Police
section.
Doubtfire. He reads. The camera shows us Police Doubtfire, but Daniel's not reading that. He's reading the obituary, and there's a picture of an old Scottish lady who's died, Mrs Doubtfire, in his apartment.
So
that's how he got the apartment so cheap. She's just died.
Makes sense. So I feel like we're getting somewhere with it now.
Definitely.
So that's why
it's definitely starting to make sense now.
Yeah, it really is. The apartment is now free because
I've got it. Sorry,
I thought you'd seen a ghost.
Police Doubtfire that burnt the real Mrs Doubtfire to death. She was killed in the arson attack that he reads.
Right.
Remember, she's not called Mrs Doubtfire. The real Mrs Doubtfire, name unknown, is killed in a fire. When Daniel reads the newspaper article about Mrs Doubtfire and takes the name, he also somehow imbues her spirit.
Okay.
Don't ask me how.
You're not an expert.
I'm not an exorcist. Might have to call a biologist for that one.
Okay. Okay, let's ask her. Hi, biologist. Are you well?
Yes, thank you.
We have a question for you. Important question.
Right.
If you die in a fire and somebody reads a newspaper article about your death and then pretends to be you based on that newspaper article, does your spirit, your dead spirit, inhabit their body?
You sure?
When you die, you're dead. You're gone.
Science for you there, isn't it?
I'm not convinced.
What do you think?
It's looking like that might be the case to explain this thingy.
Yeah, if you could just change your answer for us, that'd be good.
Right, I have a question. Why in a fire?
Because police doubt fire.
Jesus Christ.
Alright, inconclusive then.
No, it wouldn't happen. You're dead.
Alright, yeah. Alright, biologist, thank you.
You can't trust a scientist for matters of the occult, can you?
It's true.
We're talking about the spirit realm here, aren't we, at this point? I made a promise to you when we started this podcast, and it would be to never enter the spirit realm.
I remember.
But
we made the pact.
I have to break that promise.
Okay. Are you gonna...
I think we're entering the spirit realm.
Okay.
Mrs. Doubtfire, not her name, in spirit, her character, died. Fire. Daniel read the paper.
Yeah.
Chose to encapsulate her personality.
Yeah, so he chose to take the personality, but when he moved into the house, did he know that the spirit would...
I don't think so.
Do you think he knew that?
I think maybe it was a combination of reading the paper and moving into her old house, her old flat, which she's vacated. Didn't die in there because that wasn't on fire. There was no fire damage. You're going to have to do some heavy lifting now.
Okay.
To fill in the gap between whatever we've just decided around this ghost.
And why they went to the Bridges restaurant. Okay, I'm with you now. Mrs. Doubtfire, the real Mrs. Doubtfire, probably not called Mrs. Doubtfire, died. I think before she died in the fire, she wanted to kill Stuart.
Why?
She maybe used to work for him. You know,
okay. Disgruntled former employee.
Disgruntled. You know, maybe he caused the house fire. Maybe she found out something that she shouldn't known, and then he thought, I'm going to bump you off. House fire. She dies. Daniel moves in. Takes the spirit, she pops up and puts a meringue on her face. That's fine. Then she's saying to Daniel, use my identity, use my persona.
She's speaking to him through.
She's speaking to him through the flat realm. Through the realm. She says,
Spirit realm.
"Avenge me." When Daniel says, as Mrs Doubtfire, I've got the bingo card.
Avenge me.
Avenge me.
Avenge me.
Go to Bridges. Go to the restaurant. He doesn't know that Stuart is allergic to pepper, but he's going to kill him in that restaurant in some way. The way out of it is that he can be Daniel. He can go, wait, what, me? He's got an alibi because he's in the same room. See?
Oh my God.
But when Stuart says I'm allergic to pepper, he goes, right, clocked it. Get some pepper on there, swallow his throat up, he's going to choke on that big juicy prawn, and he thinks better of it. I want to do this for Mrs Doubtfire, who I have absolutely no allegiance to whatsoever.
Apart from the fact that she now embodies me.
Didn't necessarily have a choice in it. She's kind of the puppeteer all the way through it, yeah. He thinks better of it and goes, I can't kill someone at the table when my kid's watching. What do social services think? Help is on the way, dear. Help is on the way. Hops over the table. He's now the hero. Comes at great personal cost because he temporarily loses the kids. But he shows that actually he's done the right thing there. He saves Stuart. They shake hands at the end. What you don't see, the courtroom case that comes after that, and Daniel says, I can only plead insanity. That's not to do with his behaviour. It's because he's got the real Mrs.
He's got a demon in his head.
Got a demon in his head telling him to kill Stuart Brosnan. So he's pleading insanity. You know, he loses his kids, and the judge says we recommend some psychological assessment,
and that's how he exercises the demon effectively.
Yeah.
Off screen, in his psychological assessment, they get a priest in. All that exorcist stuff. They get Mrs Doubtfire out, not Mrs Doubtfire, but the ghost.
The ghost of Mrs Doubtfire.
Out of his system through, traditional spiritual means. Didn't film any of that. Didn't need to. It wasn't the plot of the film.
Yeah.
It was about family and divorce.
Family
and
film.
Funny. And men dressed as women. That's what the film's about. Not about demons, is it?
Not about demons.
Apart from your own demons.
Yeah.
Was it ever intended to show any of this in the film, or is there a director's cut maybe out there somewhere that shows?
I want to see it. I want to see the exorcism, to be honest, of Mrs Doubtfire.
And an elderly woman being burnt to a crisp. Is there a scene perhaps where Daniel is
been taken over?
Yeah.
And he's sort of doing both parts. It's a shame because actually
Robin Williams
would have nailed that.
A scene of him being
Daniel being Mrs Doubtfire, but not the same Mrs Doubtfire.
And having the spirit of an old woman pour itself into his mouth.
Literally.
Every orifice
filled
with old woman spirit.
Yeah.
I think this is just an absolute closed book.
It's
absolutely airtight, this one. Considering that we normally struggle to make a lot of sense of these, this one is so succinct.
There can't be any other explanation for this one, I don't think.
Golly gosh.
Golly gosh.
I can't believe that they cut a lot of that, but here we are.
It would have been a very different film, wouldn't it?
We have a pretty perfect film as it stands.
Yeah. But the B-roll that they used for the actual release makes a pretty perfect family film.
Yeah, agreed.
But what we've really got and what we've really uncovered is actually pretty dark stuff.
Pretty dark, but concise, wrapped up neat with a bow. Should we do the 30-second summary too?
Yeah, let's do that. An unidentified old woman tragically perishes
in a blazing inferno,
possibly caused by Pierce Brosnan.
Stuart
Brosnan.
Daniel happens to read a newspaper about her death
and moves into her empty apartment.
This invokes the magic of the spirit realm.
The old woman's soul bonds with his.
She convinces him to plot Stuart's demise,
forcing him to attend both meals.
That's the only explanation.
Daniel breaks free from her demonic influence,
saves Stuart,
pleads insanity,
judge orders psychological evaluation,
consults an exorcist,
and Daniel is finally free from the curse of Mrs Doubtfire.
Easy.
Can't get plainer than that.
No.
How else would you read into that scene? It can't be in two places. There's no other reason.
So it makes complete sense that he was possessed.
Well, if you're obsessed with this, podcast, catch us on social media.
Instagram, in fact. Drop us a message if you like the episode. Listen out for our next episode announcement coming in the week.
Well, I hope you'll all join us for next time for another episode of the Film Thingy Podcast.